All right, 615 Sessions podcast. We got Joe Rexrode of The Athletic, the New York Times, even 1025 The Game, all over the place. We got Turron Davenport of ESPN in front of the new Wall of Fame. Very, very nice. Normally, I think the last time we did one of these, all three of us were in a vehicle somewhere driving around. So it's nice to see that everybody's settled in a little bit.
A little more stationary.
A little more stationary.
Yeah.
Rexrode, is my Athletic subscription going to go down? Is my New York Times subscription going to go up? How is this going to work exactly for me?
Look, I only look at this personally. I have to refer to Vrabel's second reference as Mr. Vrabel. I have no idea on the subscriptions, but that's just my, I got to adjust to that, man.
So
look out for number one.
You're kidding. That's they're going to make you do that?
I am kidding. I think.
Oh my God.
I made that up, but that is, of course, a New York Times staple. The Mr. And Mrs., on second reference, and also the using the periods for NFL.
I
love the New York Times, but other than that, I hate the N period, N F period, L period.
Yeah,
my little quibbles
throws me off, but I'm just actively rooting for you to have to refer to Vrabel as Mr. Vrabel in future columns when you're ripping a fourth down decision. TD, why don't you walk people who are watching this on YouTube through the Wall of Fame that we have behind us here?
Yeah, it is actually my personal wall. So you have, I was so proud of this tweet. This is when I broke down the game plan, how to stop Lamar Jackson, and Dean Pease told me that it was actually the same plan that they used. So Amy Adams Strunk, Miss Amy, she came up to me and she said she loved my breakdown.
Yeah,
so that's that one. Let's see, what can you see here? This was in the studio at 1025 The Game. Got a couple of my homies there, got the Met swag on, but a couple of my homies from Philly on there. So just different memories, man. This is the wall going from my bedroom into the bathroom, and I just got different pictures. Yeah, man, it's something I wanted to do.
At least you've got your picture frames on the wall. Rexrode's appear to be like stacked up behind him in his office. I assume this is just in shambles.
And there's some nice unused wrapping paper there. That so yeah, I've really got things together here, guys.
Well, good job. Speaking of having things together, it feels like the Titans are as healthy as they've been all year long. Derrick Henry was designated to return off injured reserve, as I'm sure everybody knows by now listening to this podcast. Julio Jones appears to be a full participant at practice, despite our buddy Paul Kaharski's gripes and about his productivity. All of these things seem to be lining up for them to fall flat on their face in Houston or something like that. Like I feel it stirring in my gut about this game.
Yeah, that's something I asked Kevin Byard about. The tendency that the team has to reduce themselves to the level of competition. And he mentioned the Texans game and the Jets game, and he said that's not going to happen this week because they want that number one seed. They want that bye week. The guys want to get an additional week to just go ahead and, play it a little cool. So we'll see what happens. I think with this being a rematch and the way that they lost, how frustrating that was with all those turnovers, 4 interceptions by Tannehill, 5 turnovers in total. I don't think they're going to have a letdown game.
Rex.
So Davis Mills hits that 80-yarder to Brandon Cooks on the first series, and here we go. Here we go, everybody. For as many failings as they've had in situations like this against teams they should beat, they still, in Vrabel's era, they still won way more of the games against bad teams than they've lost. And I agree with TD. I think it is probably a good thing they lost the first one. There's no reason to lose this game. They have everything to play for. No reason to lose it.
Yeah, and it's the number one seed on the line. This is what they've worked for all year long, despite all of the different crap that they've slogged through at various points. This is a situation though where with Davis Mills at quarterback, they're not terrible. Brandon Cooks has had a pretty good year, and Davis Mills, I don't know what he is in his rookie season, and I don't know how much of it should be graded on a curve because of Houston being in the circumstance that they've been in all season long. But Turron, I kind of like him as a player, and I don't know why I feel that way other than other than he's not the worst option that they've had.
Yeah, well, it always helps when you have a guy like Brandon Cooks that you can throw the football to.
That helps.
And a lot of times, you see him like, oh, well, you know what? Brandon's down there, he'll get it. And those are the type of throws, that you're seeing him make. But, I mean, yeah, with the scheme, like the way they're doing it, it's a lot of rhythm stuff, and they try to simplify it for him. So it definitely works. I mean, they're treating him like a rookie as far as that staff is concerned, just bringing him along. And they have done better, but I think another thing I look at is, they found a way to run the football decently also, so that's helped as well.
And reportedly, your colleague at ESPN, Sarah Barshop, is saying that Rex Burkhead's going to get an extension out of this for the Houston Texans. I'm convinced that Rex Burkhead is 110 years old. He's been in the league as long as I've been alive.
Nebraska legend.
Nebraska legend. Well, there's a couple of those roaming around the league. I know one of them certainly is far past his expiration point, but we'll see how many different times he gets a job with the Raiders. Anyway, Rex, with this game and with this narrative that kind of hangs over them about playing down to inferior competition and all of these different things, like from my standpoint, I look at this and say I have you don't trust anything implicitly, right? Especially doing the job that we do, but the job that Vrabel and that staff, I think that gets lost in a lot of the coach of the year conversation. The job that Mike and that staff have done has kept them in these games, no matter how many times they turn the ball over. There has always been a clear and obvious, concise plan for them to have a path towards success. It's just a matter of whether they have one of these nuclear moments that they have tended to do, because it's not just like 1 or 2 turnovers when they turn the ball over. It's 4, or in the case of the Texans game the last time around, 5. I keep trying to run through all the different scenarios, and there doesn't necessarily pop up to me as one where they can choke this one away unless they do that again. I don't know how repeatable an offense that is from the last one.
No, I agree. And look, the first Texans game was a weird day, and it was sloppy and messy out there. And then A.J. Brown. So remind me, correct me if I'm wrong. That was not only A.J. Brown, that was Marcus Johnson that day too, correct? Didn't they both get hurt? Yeah. So then you got a guy in key moments when you're trying to throw yourself back into a game who you didn't expect to be playing, but with the offense that day. And Des Fitzpatrick. There's a lot that went into that. The Steelers game too, just bad turnovers. Yeah. And I don't know why this team gets into that. They did it in New England. I don't know why they seem to come in bunches for this team. And then in a lot of other weeks, they have no problem at all with it. But to me, that's it. That's the only way. The other bad loss, one, you're going way back. I think this defense didn't have nearly the confidence, the swagger, the gelling that it has now. So they gave up some loose plays, Zach Wilson. And they also didn't have their receiving core that day. I mean, you can find excuses for any of these.
Everything except Arizona, but honestly, week ones are just weird in the NFL every season.
And that was a good team, a team that I think is, even though they've kind of faltered late, better than probably most people thought they were, playing great and just kicking another team's butt, right? So that was just getting beat up front so badly. I look, to me, that's it. If the Titans mess around and put the ball on the ground a few times, then anything can happen. But if they just don't do that and don't give up, the big special teams play, the big explosive play on defense where you have a miscommunication, I have a hard time seeing them not winning this game convincingly.
TD, the explosive play element of this is something that has been such a big part of this team in the running game, which is different than most, right? Derrick Henry at any given point throughout the course of his career here is the exception to the rule. Most teams generate explosive plays via their passing attack. The Titans have had a little bit of that, but far less consistency. And frankly, I'm talking to Greg Cosell about this earlier in the week. He pointed out something that maybe I haven't noticed, or maybe I'm not smart enough to notice, but there's not a ton of variety in their passing concepts. They haven't been forced to do anything differently in the passing game. I'm wondering how much of that is a fair criticism of Todd Downing, or whether they just haven't felt the need to kind of use different kinds of concepts other than that bang play action crosser that we know works so well for them.
Yeah, that's something that they use so much, and it's crazy that they use it so much and it still works. I mean, it
every
was
time.
it was open last week. It was the play where Tannehill, he threw it behind A.J. Brown a little bit. He did have Racey McMath coming open on that slot fade. And that was something that I hadn't seen that as much before. Usually when you have that crosser there, you have the dig or the post over top. So that was a little bit of a variation, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot of floods and those type of things dividing the safety, like we just mentioned with those two routes like that. I don't really think they have to get really complex because most of what they're doing is off of the play action passing game. And they're really just relying on that play fake to work for them. And you're starting to see it work a little bit better, right, as they become more effective running the football. So it's definitely kind of like dummied down somewhat, but that's what they're working with. And it's working for the most part. I do miss that play action post, that they used last year with Khalif Raymond so well. And they had it one time with Julio Jones, the first play of the Steelers game.
Yes.
But the time, there wasn't time to get it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing, because we'll talk about the running game, but I guess, all of those things, Rexrode, lead back to the offensive line. The first game from start to finish that this group has played all year long comes in week 17, where they're able to stay upright. It's probably the best protection Ryan Tannehill has had, and certainly one of the better efforts on the ground against a defense that just wanted to, try and rough you up front in the Miami Dolphins. This defensive front's going to look a little different against Houston, but from the offensive line standpoint, I mean, can they, like the rest of the injury report, is it possible that they can round into form, or do you think that was more of the exception to the rule and things are going to regress back to some kind of a mean where Tannehill is constantly under duress?
No, I think it was encouraging because I think the Dolphins obviously maybe a little bit of a paper tiger with the schedule they had on that 7-game win streak, but I still think that's a legit D. I mean, their sack numbers are there. They're very aggressive. And I thought the Titans handled it well.
Miami's offense gave them nothing. Like there was 5 straight punts on the first 5 possessions of that game. At some point, it was like the Titans with Marcus Mariota. The defense can't hold up the entire game.
That's true. But I think, I feel like Nate Davis kind of coming on a little bit, and whatever all has gone on with him, it's been multiple things.
So weird.
And I mean, obviously, I think Lawan has gotten progressively better. You're probably still going to see Saffold crouching down, after some plays. I don't think that'll ever go away. You got Ben Jones fighting through it, but that's where, you win this week, and you get that extra week for all those guys. I think that's a big, big deal. Maybe for that group in particular. Although I also, Naquan Jones, Tier Tart missing Sunday's game. Those are 2 important depth guys on that defensive front. So you get them that extra week. I think that it's becoming better. I think it's getting better. I don't know that it, ever gets back to what they were doing last year. I mean, before Lawan got hurt last year, I thought their pass pro was exceptional. And I thought that, and, a lot of it is the play action stuff and you're freezing the linebackers, but still, I mean, I thought they were excellent, and they were way better than you would have expected after Lawan went down. It's just been a series of things this year. But I think that there's reason for a little bit of optimism there, and that extra time should be good for them if they get it.
Running game wise, Deontay Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard they deserve jobs somewhere after whatever this looks like, whether one of them's here as Derrick Henry's backup and, over somebody like Darrington Evans, who was giving them 0. And it feels internally like they're not terribly high on Darrington Evans, regardless of what his injury status is. It feels weird to say, Turron, that I don't necessarily know that they need Derrick Henry this week, but it feels like if there was ever a circumstance where you could say that, they've pretty effectively proven since week 8 that they can, or since week 9, that they can find ways to do this effectively without Derrick.
Yeah, I mean, they've shown that they can run the football without Henry. The thing that you have to look at, though, that you're missing is, as you mentioned, those explosives, right? He is their explosive, other than A.J. Brown catching the 5-yard pass and going 60.
Right.
So that is something that they're missing, but I don't think they'll need it this week. And honestly, When Coach Vrabel had mentioned during his presser that Henry, he practiced and he mentioned on that turf, that really kind of made my ears perk up, because that was one of the things that I know there was some concern about him making his return to play on that field turf. So getting him to practice like the snow has kind of been a blessing in disguise, because they got to see, okay, well, how will he return? We don't know how much he did, but how will he respond? And I think that's something to look at. I still don't think Derek plays on Sunday. I'm pretty sure that he doesn't, from what I've been told. But, I mean, you never know. They don't need him in this game, though. I think really with Julio Jones being back, A.J. Brown hitting somewhat of a groove, they don't really need him back. And Foreman has shown that he can carry the football. I mean, last week against the Dolphins was quite a performance. In fact, it was a career high, 132 yards.
Well, and 71 yards after contact. That dude was mowing people down. He was hugely effective. And, the weather and the wear of that game, where the offense for Miami wasn't able to give them much at all until like the Titans put them in a position where they could kick that field goal. And there was some questionable officiating reasons for that. The missed intentional grounding is probably one of the most egregious penalties or lack of penalties that we've seen all year against any team. You bring up Julio Jones, TD, and your question to Vrabel at the start of the press conference was a completely fair one. Now, I don't know that producer Reed's going to be able to turn this around in time to drop that audio in here, but for people listening or watching on YouTube, kind of lay out what you asked Vrabel and how he kind of, barked back a little bit.
Well, yeah, I'm really curious about what they're doing to get Julio Jones to football. So I asked Coach Vrabel that exactly. What are you guys doing to get Julio Jones more involved, at least to the point of what you wanted when you traded for him? Yeah. He said availability is great for any player. And I'm like, beyond that, I mean, what? And he said, well, what's your follow-up? I said, well, my follow-up is just that. What are you guys doing to get him involved? Yeah. And I don't know. You know, Coach Vrabel, man. Like he's one of those guys that just sometimes he just, I want to be upset about something. So I guess today was the thing he wanted to be upset about, and I was the one that fell under the knife. So be it. You know what I mean? I'll shoot him a text and I joke with him about it, but it is what it is. He eventually answered it, and he just said we're going to run our offense, and he said whether that's to A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Dez Fitzpatrick, Chester Rogers, or whoever else, Nick Westbrook and Kenny, had to mention that for Rexrode there, or whoever else may be out there.
Well, that's how you know he's full of it, because as soon as you bring up Dez Fitzpatrick in an answer, I don't believe anything that you said. That's disrespectful towards Dez, but you know what I'm saying.
See, I kind of that answer and the way he responded to that, because and for more context of that, Julio gives what I would say is a borderline delusional series of answers about his situation. I mean,
man,
like this idea that like he's getting all this attention and everything, and you just got to have opportunity. Like I think lately that's not been the case. I think he just really isn't doing anything to make these defenses worry about him. But not that they couldn't give him the ball more, but I kind of took that answer, guys. Vrabel kind of saying, nah, that's not really it. He's never going to come out and say that, but I felt like I'm trying to remember exactly how you asked it, TD, but you kind of mentioned what Julio said, right?
Yes, that is. Yeah, I said Julio said that they're kind of taking what defense, you're right, what defenses give them, and they're kind of doing some things to take them away.
To me, his answer kind of said to me, nah, not really. That's not really the issue. But I mean, that's me reading into it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's at least a little bit of that in there. Like, come on.
And again, Turron, you have a much deeper understanding of what they are, what's happening on the field in real time. But like, I'm looking at moments where Julio Jones is open when he has been out there, and whether he's not the first one on the progression or whatever the case may be, like there are opportunities to get Julio the football. It's not necessarily like defenses are covering him up. He's not the person that people are game planning for right now.
Yeah, it's a lot like 2019 with Corey Davis, where it was just something where he and Tannehill could not connect consistently. But then obviously 2020 things started to, because it was such a focal point, things started to happen. And that's why I've asked Tannehill multiple times, about Julio Jones, because there was a play. It was the Thursday game, I believe it was, against the 49ers, where they had that play action glance route, and it was Julio Jones running it left to right.
Yeah.
And it was open. It was a tight window throw. And at that point, it didn't seem like Tannehill had that same cockiness that he had before, right? Oh, no, it wasn't that game. It was the week before, because that game, A.J. Brown was back, and that's when he kind of like got his mojo back with A.J. back in the line.
Pittsburgh.
But on that one, he checked it down to Jeremy McNichols. It was a 7-yard game, but had he gone to Julio, that probably would have been like a 15 or 20-yard game. So there have been opportunities to get him the football. They just haven't been able to connect.
Well, and what's the parallel between what you've just described with Corey Davis in 19 and what we're talking about with Julio is that the quarterback hasn't had time with Julio Jones legitimately to get comfortable with him. I think not us here collectively, but I think people so underrate that just obvious fact that when Ryan Tannehill was out there during training camp, Julio was bubble wrapped somewhere deep in the bowels of the facility. When Julio came back, Tannehill was on the COVID list, and then the season gets underway. And yeah, there's some spectacular moments like Seattle, where he was a massive factor in their ability to stay in that game. And then Buffalo, even if it wasn't volume, that was a critical catch that mattered to keep a drive alive in a game that they needed it. So outside of those, like Julio, just standout plays, like there's not a consistency, there's not a chemistry to it. And I don't know why people undervalue that when they're talking about this element of it.
Yeah, and Tannehill's a big trust guy, if you notice. You know what I mean? That's one of the things he says so much about Marcus Johnson, right? How they developed that trust. He said it about A.J. Brown, obviously. He said it in the past about Ferguson. And these are all guys that he's gotten to work with. He used to say it about Jonnu Smith all the time. He said it about Michael Pruitt, and again, these are guys that he's worked with consistently.
So with all that said, outside of the thing that we opened the podcast with, like, is there any reason why all of us shouldn't enjoy a first round bye next week? Like what could the possible, I need a break. You need a break. Rexrode needs a break. We all need a break. The team needs a break. We all need a first round bye.
I'm not showing up at Nissan. I'm not showing up at Nissan even if they're playing. So I'm taking a bye either way.
Wild card round, you're just
right now.
Yeah,
that's right. I'm taking the bye.
You're gonna go cover some Ole Miss Tennessee basketball instead. Get the hell out of here.
Maybe.
No, not maybe. Well, you can read Joe Rexrode and all of the basketball coverage that he'll be doing during the Titans playoffs at theathletic.com. Of course, Robbie and Rexrode from 6 to 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone. You can catch Turron, Davenport all over the place, but the Talking with TD podcast is a staple for any Titans fan. And ESPN.com is where you can read all of the great work that he does. Boys, I will see you in Houston, and then we will see whatever unfolds on the field turf on NRG Stadium this Sunday. Appreciate you stopping by.
Hey, Buck, by the way, you said 104.5 The Zone. I'm 102.5 The Game. You are 104.5 The Zone.
Leave me alone. I'm tired. I've been talking a lot. All right. I've been talking a lot. Maybe that's a Freudian slip, Rex.
Oh, how about that?
Something in the works.
Yeah.
All right. Both of you leave me alone. I'm tired.
See you in Houston, boys.